One of the many lessons learned that I share with a whole bunch of other entrepreneurs is hold on to your equity as much as you possibly can. There's definitely a lot of opportunities for, giving it away. And in some cases you have to, and you should, but you have to do it very, very carefully. I was not careful. I was incredibly naive, and people became partners just like that. We had our original partners, the ones that, were with me in that wonderful evening where I said, hey, let's incorporate and do this vision that I just had. And then there's others that came along a little bit later, and they knew a different technology that we didn't know yet. And they said, hey, we'll teach you guys this new technology. Let us be partners in your company. And we said, that's a great idea. Come on in, we'll make you equal partners. So I've got a lot of horror stories about partnerships. Giving away equity is really easy. Getting it back is super hard and incredibly expensive.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Relentless Goal Achievers podcast. Today we have a relentless goal achiever with us, and I'm super excited to introduce my friend, Pivnik. He is an entrepreneurial powerhouse behind Binary Tree, which was a company that he grew to over 200 employees and then successfully sold it to a $4 billion competitor. But Steven's not just a business genius. He's also an endurance sports enthusiast. And his new book that's coming out next week, Built to Finish: How to Get to the Distance in Business and in Life. He shares a secret of a resilient mindset that conquers challenges, be it in business or extreme sports. Listen, get ready to be inspired by a man who truly knows how to go the distance. Steven, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric, so much for having me. I think I'm starting to blush from that introduction.
Yeah, well, thank you. Could you share really quick, like your upbringing? Because me and you have somewhat of a similar background in how we were brought up from as an immigrant.
Sure. I mean, my upbringing, I don't remember much of the early days, but it was pretty tumultuous. I was born in the former Soviet Union, what is now the Ukraine, and it was a pretty tough go from a religious perspective. Not that my family was ultra religious, but we were Jewish. And there was just an incredible amount of anti-Semitism. So the straw that broke the camel's back was a woman breaking a bottle over my grandmother's head and calling her a rotten Jew. At that point, my grandfather and my father made the decision to uproot the entire family and move us away for a better life. I was told we had a lot of choices. Could have gone to Israel, could have gone to Australia, could have gone to Ohio, but we ended up in
Ohio.
Ohio was one of the choices. But we knew one other family in New York City. So they chose New York City as our destination. And we ended up in Brooklyn, New York, which is where I grew up. So it was a pretty interesting time.
Yeah. So you were 2 years old when you guys came here.
Exactly.
Fairly young. And what did your parents start doing for work?
Right. So we were brought over by this organization that supported immigrating Jewish families from around the world. My father was an air conditioning mechanic, always, entrepreneurial from day one. He converted his skill sets from repairing air conditioners to cars. He went into the automobile repair business, and then he was always entrepreneurial. So he started a body shop, and for the majority of my younger years, he was a body shop owner.
How was he entrepreneurial in former USSR?
They're not so much. It was pretty hard. My grandfather and father were entrepreneurial in that they always figured out a way to get things. Being part of the Soviet Union, knee deep in communism, you can either rely on the rations that you're entitled to, or you can figure out a way to get other things. So somehow, some way, and they always say, like, if you can speak to somebody, who would you speak with? I would love to spend an hour with my grandfather on that topic alone, on how he personally figured it out and how he was always able to get us all the food and clothing and other things that most didn't have.
What was his job there?
He was in a factory. He was in some sort of factory. He was in transportation / factory. Logistics, as they would call it today.
Yeah. So so similar. Also Jewish, also persecuted, but in Azerbaijan, it wasn't as bad as it was in Ukraine, I don't think. But my wife's family is from Moscow. Oh, really? And her grandfather was one of the higher ups in the meat distribution for the entire country.
Okay.
And so the stories they would tell me about how he bartered, hey, I'll give you meat for clothes. I'll give you meat for theater
Yes.
tickets, for training,
Yep.
to get my daughter into school here. Like insane. All
Yep.
right. So you guys, I mean, you came here, your dad's resourcefulness got him to convert into a mechanic for automobiles. And so how were you growing up? Did you grow up like middle class, upper class?
I would say lower middle class is how we grew up. There was, always enough to get by. My father, all I remember is him working, 6 days a week from sunrise to sunset. Never took a sick day in his life, worked every single Saturday. And he provided for the family. So he did whatever he possibly could. And we got by. I don't remember ever wanting for anything. We weren't rich by any stretch, but
Yeah.
I grew up, in a household that had everything that we needed.
That's awesome. Okay. So how did your entrepreneurial journey begin? So you're growing up in this family, you're seeing your father have his own business. How did that translate into your life?
I started working really early. He got me a job pumping gas at a gas station next to his body shop. So while all the other kids were out, playing on most weekends and during the summer, I was pumping gas. And pumping. I picked up how to do oil changes, and then I picked up how to change brakes. So I was slowly but surely migrating into the mechanics world.
Uh-huh.
Um, Thank God. Well, I shouldn't say thank God because that would have been just fine too. Nothing wrong with blue collar work. I love and respect that. Um, so as I grew up, I started doing other jobs. I became a cashier at a local supermarket. Then I got promoted to cashier trainer. Then I got promoted to front end runner, which is supermarket talk for middle management in the supermarket world. So I always had a job, and in many instances I had two jobs, just trying to make as much as I can from my own personal hobbies. So I guess I learned the hard work ethic from him and my grandfather, and always had a job, two jobs. And then when I got into my computer career, that I applied that working mentality to that profession as well.
So when you say computer career, what is that?
All my friends knew exactly what they wanted to be when we graduated high school. The doctors knew they were going to be doctors, and the lawyers knew they were going to be lawyers, accountants, et cetera, et cetera. I had no idea what I was going to be. So, of course, you just sign up for business. Very, very, nebulous profession, especially back then in the mid 80s. So after literally 2 weeks of college, actually, first, I'm sorry. I was a geek at heart. I always had I had a Commodore 64 computer, one of the earliest, consumer computers that were available on the market. So my mother knew that I was a geek.
I didn't get to the US until 1990. Okay. So the earlier computers, I remember seeing those square, floppy disks
Oh, yeah.
but there was no internet.
No, there was zero internet, and you had this box. Mine was called a Commodore 64.
Uh-huh.
It had probably 10 times less memory, maybe 1,000 times less computing power than this phone does. And you literally programmed, like you had to write programs by yourself. There was magazines available. So instead of the internet, you would wait for your weekly subscription from a magazine called Byte to show up, and they had samples of different programs. If you want to write this game, here's the code for this game. If you want to write this type of puzzle, here's the code for this puzzle. So I would just literally spend weekends, hours on end, just typing. And as I was typing from these magazines, I would be learning these programming languages. So I taught myself how to program and had a great time writing my own video games.
So, okay. So that was the point. That was my question. So what's the purpose of having a computer back then? So you were just you were creating your own video games and then playing them on this computer.
100%. I mean, I'm sure if you wanted to come up with some sort of data processing use case, or if you wanted to do some sort of, filing system, the computer definitely had the ability to do that. But, my mind was nowhere near, the business world at that point. It was all about games and programming my own games.
What was the first game you programmed?
What's that?
What was the first game you programmed?
My claim to fame is Space Invaders. So
Space Invaders. Wow.
My own version of Space Invaders. That was a lot of fun.
That's pretty cool. That's the one with the jet that's going left to right and you're shooting all the stuff, or which one?
Exactly. So there's these
Yes.
aliens that are moving left and right.
Oh, I love
And
that game.
yeah, it was one of my favorite games at the arcade. And I'm like, after I learned how to program things doing what I just described, I said, you know what? I'm going to replicate my most favorite game that I spent a ton of quarters on. And I
That
did.
is that is awesome, man. Okay, so all right, got it. So now you learned how to program different languages and create games. How did that translate into what you're going to do?
So I applied to Polytech. So Polytech was a really good technical college in Brooklyn at the time. And I remember getting the acceptance letter like it was yesterday. I go to the mailbox. I get, oh my God, Stephen Pivnik, you're accepted to Polytech. I run upstairs to my parents. I'm like, guess what? I got accepted to Polytech. And they totally burst my bubble. They're like, "You're not going to Polytech. Nobody can afford Polytech." What are you talking about? I said, "Okay, I'm not going to Polytech. I'm going to apply to a CUNY school, a state school, or I'm sorry, a SUNY school." I applied to Baruch College in Manhattan. I got accepted, and I went there for a whopping 2 weeks. And then my mother said, "Nobody's got time for this college nonsense. What does business really mean? You're a geek. You love computers. There's this programming course being offered that offers job placement, like real job placement after you finish." And it was in the city on 5 Beekman Street. Everybody called the school Beekman 5 just because of that. I have no idea what the real name of the school is. And they taught COBOL at the time. That was the popular programming language. So it was a 9-month course. After 6 months in, they offered me an interview. So they also had job placement, right? So they got me an interview with a publishing company called Reader's Digest. Surprisingly, it's still pretty popular, but probably less known. But back in the day, it was like the number one from a quantity perspective, magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a job in Westchester, New York, programming COBOL for their customer billing program at the ripe old age of 19 years old.
So yeah, wow. So what's fascinating about this story is the fact that your mom, with her background, had the foresight to say, "Why you don't need college for what you're going to be doing. Get out of that." Because I just understand that old Russian Soviet mentality, right? Like college, university, you have to
Sure.
do that, right? You have, because that's the only way to grow. Like my mom was a teacher at a university. My wife's parents, one's a PhD, one is a doctor. Like, I mean,
Sure.
education is super high on everybody's list. And your mom was like, "Wait, you don't need this." Where did
Yeah.
that come from?
I have no idea, but I thank her to this day that she had that foresight. I would have been lost in this business world. I don't know which direction my life would have gone into, but I can't complain at all that she let me pursue this little geek hobby of mine, which turned into a career, which turned into a business, which turned into an international company.
That is amazing. So where'd you get the idea for binary tree? What is binary tree?
So it's interesting. So I started my career as a programmer at Reader's Digest, and then I slowly morphed into consulting. It wasn't as sophisticated as it sounds. Back then, if you were a consultant, that means you worked for a headhunting firm, basically a body shop that would just place you on different projects based on the clients that they have. So I worked for various clients, and then I realized that, you know what? This body shop that's placing me on these projects is making serious margin, like 20 to 30% margin on my billing rate, and they're not adding any value whatsoever. They just place the resource on a project and they're collecting 20, $30 an hour. So I said, you know what? There's an opportunity here to do something different. We can be that organization that does work and places bodies, but we can add a whole bunch of value from a customer service perspective, from a project management perspective. We can offer benefits. We can make the employees feel, these consultants feel like they're part of something bigger than just this one project that they're on, which is how I felt working for these body shops. So working on a project for a body shop, I approached a couple of my peers and I said, "Hey, why don't we start up shop and do what I just described on a larger scale?" And they said, "Yeah, sure, we're in." So that was how the company started. And when it came time to actually fill out our incorporation papers, we couldn't come up with a name. So one of my partners at the time, he just opened up a programming book and he was randomly just swapping pages. And binary is a very technical term. So he's like, oh, binary tree, put that down. So I'm like, okay, binary tree. I put binary tree down on the application and the company was incorporated as binary tree.
So were they partners in the company, or were you the 100% owner and they were employees?
Yeah, so one of the many lessons learned that I share with a whole bunch of other entrepreneurs is hold on to your equity as much as you possibly can. There's definitely a lot of opportunities for, giving it away. And in some cases you have to, and you should, but you have to do it very, very carefully. I was not careful. I was incredibly naive and people became partners just like that. We had our original partners, the ones that, were with me in that wonderful evening where I said, hey, let's incorporate and do this vision that I just had. And then there's others that came along a little bit later and they knew a different technology that we didn't know yet. And they said, hey, we'll teach you guys this new technology. Let us be partners in your company. And we said, that's a great idea. Come on in. We'll make you equal partners. So I've got a lot of horror stories about partnerships. I've got some great stories as well. But giving away equity is really easy. Getting it back is super hard and incredibly expensive. So please be careful.
Okay. So these guys were partners. You brought on more partners, and somewhere along the way, you grew it to 200 employees.
Right. So we started off our business as a consulting organization. We were doing custom application development. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, there was no SaaS. There was no, Microsoft Cloud. There was no Salesforce. There was no all of these, Workday, all these other SaaS applications. If a company wanted to do something to meet their business objectives, they needed to write custom code. So there was a lot of organization. So we basically grew up as a custom application development shop, writing custom programs for large companies. JP Morgan was a customer, American Express, Philip Morris, the United Nations, several other large organizations within New York City were our customers. And we were writing really cool custom applications for them. We made a name for ourselves in this one specific technology called Lotus Notes, not Lotus 123, Lotus Notes. This was an email and collaboration platform, which believe it or not, is still around today, but it was super popular back then. Based on our reputation, a bank came to us and said, hey, you guys know Lotus Notes really well. We're currently running Microsoft Mail, and we want to move all of this data, the calendar, the inbox, the contacts from Microsoft Mail to Lotus Notes because we want to deploy Lotus Notes company-wide.
And, as we sit here and talk, it's like, yeah, this guy made it, right? And we're seeing all the positive stuff, but how many hiccups did you have along the way? Like, take me to a place where you just thought it was, and I don't know if this happened. I'm just assuming this happened. Sure. Haven't spoken to enough entrepreneurs where you had to make a decision whether you were just going to shut it down or continue moving with it. Have you had anything like that?
Oh, how much time do you have?
As much as you got, man.
Yeah, I'll talk about this. I guess one of the biggest ones, and this is really unfortunate. This is again, going back to being naive and really not understanding everything there is to know about business. There was actually a great thing, which turned into a horrible thing. At the end of the 90s, a company approached us and they didn't want to buy our entire company. At the time, we were both a software company. We were selling these conversion programs, and we were also still doing services. A company did not want the software part of our business. They only wanted all the consultants that were associated with our services business. So they did an asset purchase. We split our company in half. Anybody associated with the software business stayed. Everybody associated with the consulting business went to this new company, myself included. They wanted to make sure that the leader of the company goes. Otherwise, the consultants would probably quit. So
just so I understand, when the company got split in half, were you 50%, or you had shares in both companies at this point, or did you sell?
Yeah, I still had all of my shares in Binary Tree, and I retained that ownership. But now I became an equity owner and employee of the new company that had acquired the services part of my company. So being super naive and being super trusting, I put a management team in place to run what was left because I was going to be busy running, doing my job, which was director of consulting services at this new company. We did like 8 more acquisitions, post the acquisition of my division. So I was incredibly busy, flying around the country doing it, but I really wasn't paying attention to my baby. I wasn't getting management reports. I wasn't getting financial statements. I really wasn't keeping the management team accountable. What happened was I get 2 years into my endeavor with this new company. I get a call from the bank because I was personally guaranteeing the credit line and saying, hey, we haven't received an interest payment in 3 months. I said, what do you mean? Like, no, we haven't received an interest payment in 3 months. So that was incredibly alarming. That was a big wake up call. I did a little bit of digging and found out that the company was being completely mismanaged and for all intents and purposes, run into the ground. So I had to leave my high paying job, which was guaranteed with the company that acquired my consulting practice, to come back and rescue my baby. Because it was literally 2 weeks away from having to file chapter 11.
Wow.
So that was pretty gut-wrenching times where I needed to interview and again, I've been away now for 2 years. I didn't know more than half of the people that worked there at this point. So I had to interview every single person, ask them what they did, why it was important to the company. And I had to whittle down the staff to, I think it was 8 people. So
out of how many?
I think at the time there was probably 30-ish.
Okay.
And I knew that the cash flow was abysmal at the time. And I'm like, this is the only cash flow I can possibly afford. And it was gut-wrenching. And then the next 6 months was touch and go. I mean, to your point of at what point did you want to throw in the towel? I had a really good friend in the insurance business where I probably went through 2 weeks worth of detailed conversations with him about joining him in his insurance business, because I'm like, I don't think I can do this anymore, and I need to figure out a way to make money. I think insurance is the way to go.
Why didn't you just stay at the other company? Like, why didn't you say, you know what, screw it, I'm already here, I'm making good money, it's guaranteed. So they ran it into the ground, whatever.
I just thought it had so much more potential, and it was mine. At the end of the day, I started it. I'm not a quitter, and I thought that I can nurse it, back to health. And I thought in my mind that brighter days are ahead if we do the right things. So my mom had her crystal ball when she let me go to computer school. I think I had a little crystal ball saying there's good things that could be made of this if we paid attention to the right things.
Damn, man, you really are built to finish, aren't you?
That's a good one.
So let me ask you, if you had to do it all over again, what would you have done differently at the point of the split, as far as how you would have put people in place, what you would have done to stay in touch and be on top of things?
Yeah, I mean, hindsight being 2020, it's so easy right now, right? As long as I did the standard things, just ask for weekly financial reports. I mean, definitely quarterly, at the very least monthly. But if you really want to keep tabs on what's going on, ask for weekly KPIs and have a lot of KPIs in place. Hold the team accountable. Be a proper board member to make sure you understand what the CEO and the executive team are actually doing, what they're focusing in on. Watch your cash flow like it's oxygen, which it is to any business. So a lot of these, I mean, again, I'm not ashamed to talk about it because I'm hoping that, my mistakes will prevent somebody from doing similar silly things. But it's just such rudimentary, business management 101. If done properly, would have resulted in this, near bankruptcy and closing of the doors.
Wow. How are you from a leadership perspective on setting the vision for the company and ensuring that everybody understands what that is?
It's interesting. So when I came back, I learned a lot from the company that I worked for those 2 years. Now, this is a company which had an experienced management team. They just raised $75 million, which is not a lot of money today, but it was a ton of money, right? In the late 90s.
Mhm.
And I call that period, because I never got a chance to go to college, I call that period my MBA in a box. It was so incredible to learn how they operated, how they executed, how they planned, how everybody had their role, all the measurements that we had in place. I went from almost no measurements to just being scrutinized on so many different things, on average bill rates, on utilization levels, on margins, on gross margins, on EBITDA. There was just so many new things, flying my way, and I was like a sponge. I absorbed all that, and I really, really admired our CEO. And when I came back to rescue, my baby, I was able to apply all of those leadership principles and vision setting and goal execution to my own company. So it, in hindsight, it worked out well, because this was a great, educational experience for me, and it benefited my company when I came back tremendously.
Yeah. So now, I mean, you're consulting other CEOs. Do you see that most companies are good at, and what's the importance of having that vision, making sure everybody understands it, having clear goals set for your organization as a leader? And how do you see people doing that these days?
Yeah, some people do better than others. A lot of CEOs, myself included, back then thought like, hey, if I understand our vision, if I know what our strategy is, everybody gets it. What do you mean you don't understand? It's clear as day. So there's such a huge opportunity for greater transparency, that every CEO would benefit from being much more transparent about what it is they're trying to accomplish, and sharing all their measurements on the path, towards that accomplishment. We became an incredibly transparent company. Other than actual payroll numbers, I'm sorry, individual payroll numbers, we shared every number the company had, from top line all the way down to bottom line.
Wow.
So when we obviously, we always had financial goals, we had operational goals, we had market goals, we had market share and market penetration goals, all that stuff. But we had a quarterly meeting. We called it so BT, binary tree is BT, and we had a BT all, basically an all hands meeting at least every single quarter, where we actually presented our financials to the company, just like CFOs presented to Wall Street every single quarter. This was our plan. This is how we did, and this is what went right. This is what went wrong. A lot of people cared about it. Most didn't. And then we went down into more, operational things that people understood better, from a market share perspective, from a product feature function perspective, from a geographical expansion perspective. But transparency was, front and center, to make sure that everybody understood where we were heading, where we are, and where we're heading.
Man, so good. That is really cool that you guys did that on a quarterly basis. Talk to me about how you set goals. Like, did you do that? You got an idea and now it's a goal, or what's the process of actually setting a goal for the company?
Yeah, so there were a ton of goals, right? So there was the financial goals,
Mhm.
and we wanted to make sure that we continued to grow. Hindsight, we could have been a little bit more aggressive in our goals, but we wanted to make sure that we were, achieving at least 10% growth year over year. So there was the financial objective. From the finances, that trickled down into, okay, what do we need to do internally in order to meet those financial goals? And it was mainly just more sales and marketing, right? You want to increase your top line, you got to sell more. You got to get into other geographies. You have to have more sales staff, and you have to do a better job at marketing. So those things we did incredibly well every year, because we grew for 26 years straight. So we executed, well on that. And then from a product perspective, we always had a goal of being at the top of our market. We did have competition. There was two, maybe three, some smaller players that did similar things, and we wanted to make sure that we were ahead of the competition at all times. So our R&D expenses were actually much higher than they could have been, just because we refused to be in second place from a functionality perspective with our software.
So how did you evoke those ideas, right? I mean, I can't imagine that you were the head of all that stuff, right? Like, what was the process for that? Did you have leadership meetings? Did you get ideas from the users? How did you figure out how to make your product better?
That's a great question. A lot of entrepreneurs, think that they have the best ideas in the world and the best solution, and they sometimes many go to their grave, learning that that wasn't the case. You have to listen to your customers. You have to let the market, dictate on what is actually needed. And we went above and beyond to make sure that we listened to our customers. And this is why we won a lot of deals over our competition, to the point where the competition actually even ended up buying us because they just couldn't keep up. If a customer had a unique request, most companies would say, sorry, our base software does this, and this is all you get. And if we'll consider your request, we'll put it into the product pipeline, and you may see it 3 months, 9 months next year. If a big customer had a request, they would see it before they sent us their check. Because we bent over backwards, because most of our customers were the larger companies in the world. Like if you threw a dart at the Fortune 5000, even with your eyes closed, there's a pretty good chance you'll hit a customer of ours. These large companies, they have very unique requests. You would think, email is email, calendar is calendar, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many tiny little nuances within calendar entries and email boxes and folders and different versions and cloud versus on-premise. The list goes on and on and on. So when there was a unique request, we said, you know what? If this large company needs it, there's probably going to be another large company down the line that needs it as well. Let's go ahead and implement this feature request for them. So listening to the market is key versus just having like your own vision and like coding till you run out of money and then the market not accepting what you're writing.
Yeah, that's really cool that you did that. Let me shift gears a little bit to you as a man personally, right? How do you personally set your goals?
How do I set my goals?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I like to achieve things, right? I like to stretch myself, personally. And when I see things that I haven't done yet, to me, that's really, really intriguing and inviting to pursue. Mainly in my endurance sports.
Sorry to interrupt you, Steve,
Yeah,
but those things that you haven't done yet, they have to be in alignment, right? Like in alignment with some greater purpose for your life or something. Like you're not just doing everything you have never done yet, right?
no, that list is way too long.
Yes.
I guess my number one priority in life as a man is to show our two daughters, that anything is possible. And I hate to use another company's tagline, but hey, I'll use it. The Ironman tagline is anything is possible, which is why I love the Ironman lifestyle so much. So I want to show them that, hey, my grandfather, my father thought that a better life is possible, and most people don't think a better life is possible, and it truly is. So I like to do larger than life things, just to show my kids and to inspire others along the way. I get so much satisfaction by seeing others, pick up a healthier lifestyle, some sort of sporting habit, an entrepreneurial habit. My daughter quit her job a couple of months ago to set up her own company. That was one of the proudest days of my life. So inspiring others is, I guess, the purpose that drives me.
Yeah. As a coach, I see a lot of people, and most people would agree that anything is possible, but they don't believe that it's possible for them.
Right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's possible for Armstrong, who can win however many Tour de France's, and it's possible for that guy who does Ironmans with his handicapped kid on his back. Right. But that's not possible for me. It's possible for them. How is your mindset different?
The mindset is different because I guess history helps, right? As a college dropout, I could have made a lot of excuses saying that's not for me. I'm not smart enough. I'm educated enough. I could have made those excuses before starting and scaling an international software company. As a couch potato, I could have said, when I saw that Ironman video, which is what got me started on all this in 2010, I could have said, whoa, that event is insane. That's not for me. I'm a couch potato. I don't know how to run properly. I can bike a little bit. I can't swim more than 2 laps in a pool. I could have said, okay, you know what? I should have flipped the channel. But I said, I didn't. I said, you know what? I don't know how to do any of that, but I'm going to figure it out. And I just want to get that message across that people shouldn't say that's not for me. I can't do that, because they can. It's a ton of work. You have to know your why. And once you know
Yeah.
your why and you go after it, it may take a ton of years. It took me 14 years to get into the Ironman World Championship, but I got there.
What are the steps to get to that?
Oh boy. So first of all, you have to finish a triathlon, right? So you have to become really comfortable in swimming, biking, and running. And then you have to become really comfortable in swimming, biking, running really long distances. So a single Ironman is a 2.4 mile swim, a 112-mile bike, and a 26.2 marathon in one day, back to back to back, right? You have 17 hours to finish this 140-mile race. That's one Ironman. If you're super fast and they measure things by age groups. If you're at the top of your age group, and then you automatically qualify for the world championship, and you get to go. So you can theoretically, not theoretically, this is actually proven, you can do one race, be at the top of your age group, you qualify for the world championship, and then you go to Hawaii.
Top of the race with top of the age group within that one race?
Within that one race.
Oh, okay.
So Ironman has become so big of a corporation now, of a brand, that they have 2 to sometimes 4 races every single weekend, someplace around the world.
Mhm.
And at every race, they have X amount of qualifying spots for the world championship. So in some age groups, it's 1 spot. In other age groups, it's 3 spots. But in that one race, if you're at the top of your age group, you get an offer. Do you want to go to Kona, Hawaii for the world championship? And you either say yes or no. And if you say no, it goes to the next person. So that's one way to get in. The other way, which was my way, because my motto, and that's is actually a chapter in my book called "Not Fast, Not Last." I train hard enough just to finish these races, I would have to train 40 hours a week to actually be at the top of my age group. I'm just not there yet. They have something which I call the frequent flyer program. Their name for it is called the Legacy Lottery. If you finish 12 full distance Ironman, then you get a lottery ticket. And if you're picked, you get to go to the world championship with the best in the world. So it's 2,500 athletes, 2,400 of the fastest triathletes in the world, and 100 lucky lottery winners who just race a lot. So you get to toe the line with the who's who of this sport, which is the most incredible feeling in the world. It's like it's like an average golfer going to play at the Masters with Tiger Woods. Literally teeing off with him at the same exact time, which is what we do. So 100 people like me get to tee off at the starting line with 2,400 of the fastest triathletes in the world.
That's pretty cool. Why do you do it?
I love the physical and mental challenge, and I love the ability to completely shut off. In today's day and age, it's impossible to be away from this thing. I'm guilty as most. When I train and when I race, it's not there. And I just get to, get into my zone and think about absolutely nothing and absolutely everything at the same time. And just focus on the water ahead, the road ahead, what have you. And it's just an incredibly just liberating feeling to be able to do this.
Yeah, man. So if there's somebody that's, an entrepreneur, but things are not going their way right now, they're just feeling stuck. They don't know what to do next. They don't know, they just don't know where to go. What do you recommend for them to do?
It's easy. Get advice. And one of the many things I did wrong and then right was I really thought I knew everything. And I basically trudged along just like I do in races. I'm going to get to the finish line. I don't know how. I'm going to get to the finish line. I felt like that earlier on in my career until I realized that I really need to surround myself with advisors, and more importantly, advisors that have been there, done that. So there's so many, for any entrepreneur that's out there struggling, I guarantee you there's hundreds, of others that have been in your shoes, in your industry, with the same predicament that you have, whether it's shrinking sales, a horrible partner, an evil board, product quality issues, you name it. You are not the first to have these issues. Get an advisor or advisors that have been there, done that, and they can help, steer you out of this rut that you may be in.
So if one of those entrepreneurs hired you as a consultant to come in and take a look at their business and revamp, let's just say they said, Stephen, look, I don't know what we're doing. Our sales are dropping. Customers are leaving. Can you just take a look at this? Hang out with us, take a look, and let me know what we should change. What are you looking at first?
First and foremost, it's the leadership team. I truly believe that it's about the team first, and everything else second. So you really have to look at the team and make sure you have the right players in the right places. I'm not saying that there's an opportunity to replace everybody or to upgrade everybody, but there's definitely, in most organizations, there's an opportunity for improvement, some realigning of roles, responsibilities, maybe some realigning of the org chart and the reporting structures, things like that. So first and foremost, it's the team. And it's amazing, like when you do the smallest adjustments, sometimes lead to the greatest changes and the best changes. So to answer your question, start with looking at the team and make sure you got the right people.
What are you looking for? Like, how do you know if it's the right people or not?
Sometimes it's really easy. Sometimes it's really objective, right? Just numbers. So let's say from a sales perspective, let's say you're stuck at $10 million. Has your head of sales ever worked at a company that's done more than $10 million of sales? If the answer is no, no wonder you're having a problem breaking that $10 million barrier. The next area is finance. Let's say you're having you're having a bunch of problems with your banking relationships, with your operational metrics, with other processes within finance and accounting. Well, has your CFO ever worked for a company that's done more than $10 million in sales? If the answer is no, then you'd be much better served over clubbing the position and hiring somebody, a CFO, let's say, that's worked for a $30 million company that can take a look at your $10 million company and say, oh, hold on, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. So those are just two examples. So the numbers sometimes tell the story.
Yeah. Wow. What do you do when you don't feel like training?
What do I do when I don't feel like training? I read a lot. I devour books. Actually, mostly during training. I go through audiobooks like nonstop because that's one way to kill 5 hours on a bike ride.
Oh yeah. What are you listening to now?
I'm listening to Relentless.
Okay.
It's
Navy SEAL.
No, Relentless is hold on. It's actually about a bow hunter that
Okay.
I'm not a hunter. I have nothing against it, but I'm not a hunter. He talks about what it takes to actually go out in some of the roughest terrain in the country, and to camp out and to put yourself in the right position for success. So while he uses the hunting paradigm, it's really applicable to so many different use cases where if you want to be at the top of your game, you need to be uncomfortable and get to a place that most other people aren't willing to go to.
That's pretty cool. Were you running Ironmans when you were leading the company, or did the Ironman stuff start afterwards?
So the Ironman, it's kind of my midlife crisis. So yes, I was running the company. When I turned 40 is when I kind of realized that I've got a lot of bad genes in my body. My grandparents and parents had it all. Cancer, high blood pressure, diabetes, strokes, you name it.
Had it all. I love that. They had it all.
They had it all. So I came to the realization that I got some bad stuff brewing in me because all of these diseases are hereditary. So I said, if God forbid they should ever surface in me, I want to be in the best shape possible to fight them. So, and I learned about this thing called triathlon. Then I learned about Ironman and I started pursuing it. And again, I wasn't going to get in because I'm fast. I needed to do this legacy thing, which requires 12 full distance races. And it's really interesting how serendipitous this was. One of my advisors said, remember my comments earlier about the management team and making sure you have the right people in the right places?
Yeah.
He said to me, why don't you look in the mirror and let me know whether you think you're the right person to continue to lead this? And I did
Wow.
something which I'm very, very happy about. And a lot of CEOs won't do this, but they should consider it. I said, you know what, Stephen, you're next for being upgraded. So I promoted myself to executive chairman and I brought in a CEO to run my company. So this did two things. It allowed the company to be run by somebody who wasn't encumbered by any of the baggage and the luggage and the drama that I was encumbered with. And it allowed me to focus on getting to 12. So the first year of his role, I did 3 more Ironman, and then the second year I did 4 more Ironman, which got me to 12. So I was accomplishing my personal journey while he was growing the company and getting it ready for sale.
Wow. I mean, the purpose for every leader is to get themselves promoted out of the job, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, and you did that. Did you know that? Was that just was that just internal for you, or did you read that in some books?
I didn't read in the book. It was, again, advice going back to my earlier point of if when you surround yourself with people that have been there, done that, they're going to give you some great advice. And some of it's going to be hard. And again, the advice wasn't given to me from you're doing a horrible job perspective. It was somebody else can probably do it better. You should consider it. So I looked around, I said, no, nobody, and as most founders would say, nobody can replace me. Nobody knows his business better than me. Nobody knows my team better than me. Guess what? I'm not saying it's easy. This is hard to find the right match. I consider myself super lucky that I found the right match. And he did a fantastic job of continuing to grow the company, getting it ready for sale, and most importantly, proving to the market that I wasn't an integral part anymore because I didn't want to be part of the sale. So if for any entrepreneur that's getting ready for an exit, if you want to be part of the exit, fantastic. And I think there's a lot of great things that can happen there. But if you don't want to be part of the exit, you have to prove to the acquiring company that you're not integral anymore to day-to-day operations.
Man, what a good philosophy. Tell us about your book, Stephen.
My book, Built to Finish. So when I embarked upon this endurance sports hobby of mine, I found that there's a lot of similarities between entrepreneurship and endurance sports. I think I've coined this phrase. Entrepreneurship is an endurance sport. There's so many similarities: planning, preparation, execution, pivots, setbacks, perseverance, stamina. All of these things happen. You need to get into and execute a race, and you need all of them on an entrepreneurial journey. As I started getting more and more serious about my Ironman journey, I started becoming actually a better executive. I started tracking things better because I started tracking my routes, my paces, my calorie intake, my calorie burn, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm tracking so many things personally. I should be tracking more things at work. So my KPIs went through the roof. My perseverance got better. My patience got better at work. There was just so many, complementary things that were happening back and forth that I just wanted to memorialize my journey in the hopes of just inspiring others to do something similar. Going back to my concept of anything is possible. So I wanted to put it all on paper, which I did, and I'm getting some pretty good reviews. So I'm hoping that this inspires others to really embark on something that they previously thought was not possible.
I'll definitely get the book. I'm very curious to read it, and it sounds like a true inspiring story. I want to ask you one last question. Like when you're setting goals, right? Because we're the relentless goal achievers, right? But I think achieving a goal has as much to do with it as setting one, right? Sure. And I feel like, you hear Les Brown's quotes of, you don't fail because you aim too high and miss, you fail because you aim too low and hit. So when you're setting a goal, how scary should it be? How big should you be thinking when the idea first enters your mind?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer, and I mentioned this in the book a couple of times, that true learning and growth begins at the edge of your comfort zone. So it shouldn't be ridiculously scary. First of all, you have to believe that that it's doable. You have to believe that it's a stretch. It has to be a stretch, but you have to believe that it's doable, because until you believe that it's doable, the mind is a crazy thing. It'll prevent all the actions necessary to prepare, for that goal. So make it a stretch goal, get out of your comfort zone, but believe that it's 100% doable.
So what's a stretch goal? I mean, you being a couch potato to Ironman, that wasn't the goal though, was it? The goal was first what, triathlon?
No, the goal was first triathlon, second
Okay.
an Ironman finish. And that after I proved that I can do an Ironman, I said, I want to go to the world championship one day.
Okay, but most couch potatoes, the goal is 5K. You know what I mean?
Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
okay, but you're like triathlon.
Set a goal for 5K. I mean, there's swimming, biking, and running, and everybody I speak with has one excuse or the other. I can't swim, or my knees hurt. Okay, you know what? Then there's biking. You can do a lot of really, really epic things on just the bicycle. Anything from a 10-mile race, and you don't have to do races. There's events that are just rides. Like you can ride from Manhattan to Montauk on Long Island, and it's not a race. It's just a ride, and you can go from New York City to Niagara Falls. And that's just two maybe extreme examples. And there's significantly shorter versions where you're literally just riding and enjoying the outdoors. You don't have to race. You're not huffing and puffing. You're literally just enjoying outdoor physical activity.
Yeah, I got a good friend, Wesley Morris, who's actually been on this podcast. He just did a ride to raise money from, I think he left like Pittsburgh area, somewhere in Pennsylvania, all the way down to South Carolina. It was a 500-mile ride that he did over a few days on a bike, which was really cool. Yeah. Wow. Steven, you definitely over delivered. Last question. I know I keep saying that, but these questions keep coming to me, man. I'm so intrigued by your mindset and the stuff you've already accomplished. Why is it important for you to constantly have something ahead to go towards?
You know what? It keeps me motivated. I always have a race on the calendar because I know that there's something coming up. And not that I don't have the discipline to stay healthy anyway. It helps tremendously when I know I need to stay healthy and I need to stay active because of an event that's coming up. It could be a race. It could be on the next mountaineering trip. It could be like an extreme hike that's coming up. So it's important to me to have something on the calendar so that mentally I'm continuously making the right, healthy choices so that I can be as fit as possible to achieve whatever it is that's next.
Yeah, you remind me of Viktor Frankl's book, A Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah,
where as long as you have something to look forward to that's pulling you every single day, you're gonna get there, which is pretty cool, man. You can overcome 100%. Anything at that point. Steven, thank you so much. What day is your book coming out?
My book is coming out on Tuesday, January 30th. It's available on Amazon. It's available in Barnes and Nobles. It'll be available in airport kiosks probably a month after that. And there's an audiobook coming, 6 or 8 weeks after. And I appreciate the ability to raise awareness about it. Thank you.
I'm honored that we got a chance to help you promote it. And this episode, I'll be sure, comes out Tuesday, January 30th to honor you and your book. So if you're listening to this, get your butt to Amazon, support Steven, and learn a little bit more about how you can get unstuck, reach your goals, set those big goals, have a purpose for your life, and go do something productive. Steven, thank you. We'll see you guys on the next episode